We're just waiting for attendees to start connecting. We'll see the number of attendees increasing slowly. For those who are unable to join via Zoom, we will be broadcasting on YouTube. Okay, we see the numbers slowly rising. We're sitting on 276. We're just waiting for the numbers to increase, and then we can get the show on the road. Dr. van Lierop is raring to go, and he's accompanied by Dr. Smith, who will be helping him with the Q&A. As soon as we reach the significant number, we have 500 delegates registered for tonight. And obviously there will be others joining us via the YouTube channel. All existing webinars, all previous webinars are also available on the YouTube channel. For those who have missed parts of or would like to refer back to it, the South African Dental YouTube channel, just search the South African Dental Association and they could have access to the previous webinars. Okay, I think the numbers have stabilized at around 315. So without any further ado, I'm going to officially open the event. A few announcements, housekeeping rules. Please refrain from using the raised hand. All comments, questions should be typed in the Q&A tab. Those familiar with Zoom will find it in the bottom of the panel. All attendees attending via Zoom will be issued CPD for one clinical CEU. Tonight's event qualifies for one clinical CEU. CPD certificates will be loaded to the SADA platform and you will be able to access all your certificates under your member profile. If you are not a SADA member, you will be able to create a profile for yourself and access your CPD certificates. This functionality will be available from next week onwards on the SADA platform. We are streaming live on YouTube also, just in case you have difficulty to access the Zoom platform. So I'm going to give a small introduction for Dr. Jean van Lierop. After graduating from the University of Stellenbosch in 1999, Jean worked in private practice in the Netherlands and the United Kingdom. Returning to South Africa, he achieved his postgraduate diploma in aesthetic dentistry at the University of Western Cape and a master's degree in restorative dentistry in 2019. After years of postgraduate training and continuous lecturing in education, he has developed a deep passion and understanding of reconstructive dentistry. He believes that creating durable improvements of the entire oral health structure is only possible if we can achieve predictability, durability, and beauty. This belief has led him to complete an intensive course in advanced reconstructive dentistry with the Academy of Reconstructive Dentistry in the Netherlands. Jean played an integral role in the founding of the South African Academy of Aesthetic Dentistry and currently serves on the executive board as president. He is also member and honorary fellow of the International Team for Implantology and helps support the South African dental community through his ongoing involvement in training and education courses. Understanding the impact our smile has on your self-esteem and the way society perceives us, Jean has been actively involved in creating awareness and raising funds for the Smile Foundation through different projects. These include summiting Kilimanjaro Uhuru Peak and raising 150,000 Rand to operate on children born with cleft lip and palate deformities. He was also the instigator behind the Mad Run, a 280-kilometer trail run across Table Mountain, and the 35-day challenge, summiting Table Mountain each day for 35 days in aid of Miles for Smiles and the Smile Foundation. I hand over to tonight's speaker, Dr. Jean van Lierop, and Dr. Corné Smith will be accompanying him in the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadeem. Thank you for those great words. It's great to be here with you guys. It's sad that I can't actually look at everybody and see everybody as we go through tonight. But I trust that you'll be there and that you'll be listening, and hopefully I can share some of the thoughts and things that are going through my head over the past few weeks, and obviously over the past few months during these weird and strange times that we're actually in. Tonight is something different, very different to what we've been thinking about and what I personally have been doing in teaching and lecturing over the past years. And that is that I want to try and move away from dental clinical work and look at something else, look at a different aspect, the one aspect that we tend to forget and we tend to neglect most of the time. It was interesting listening to what I've done over the past 20 years of working as a dentist, going back many years into Holland and then the UK. And I've always had a great passion for the profession. But a lot of that work has been geared towards clinical skills and education. A lot of it's been trying to work on my own abilities, how I produce restorations, how I work in my own environment, and how I can better be who I am as a clinician. But as I share my screen with you, I want to kind of think of something slightly different. Can you see that, Nadim?
Yes, all good.
Thank you. I want to look at something different. And that is the question, what about the patient? Because we spend so much time and effort in upskilling ourselves, we tend to forget other things. And I think that this photograph really does show a lot about what's going on in our daily practices. If you look at the photograph, you can see all the elements that actually play a role within our work. And I believe that the amount of time we spend to something is also shows where our value or where our interest lies. Now, in this photograph, we can see how much is actually taken up by the clinical work that's taking place. All the digital toys, all the playing, all the education, everything that we've been doing over those many years, all that effort is reflected in almost half of the entire photograph. Then there's some part which is the practice, our staff members, and what happens within the practice and what is there. And somewhere in there, there's me. And I try to get a little bit more of a balanced life. And I try and spend some time on myself and doing things that I enjoy and that I want to do, and running up in the mountains for those of you who know me. But there's one aspect here that is very neglected, and that is the actual patient. What is the patient's role in all of this? And the patient is probably the most important aspect of this entire photograph. And we tend to neglect it so much. And it would be interesting to see actually how many non-dentists are watching today on social media and trying to follow and seeing what's going on, and to get a perspective as to what their views are of dentistry. So today, what I'd like to do is actually focus on that one person that is the important part in this entire business and this entire work that we call dentistry. We need to understand that patient. We need to understand what goes on in their minds and how they perceive and see dentistry. To do that, we need to understand what the patient's value system is. In other words, we need to understand what they value in the treatment that they receive from us. Just like dentists or individuals, or like any person, we have a value system. So this is based on Maslow's theories, where we look at having to fulfill the basic needs that are present. And once we fulfill the basic needs, we can move up into different phases within our lives. That is both personally and our business, so we can look at the practice life cycle, so the phases that a practice goes through and how it survives, how it builds, and how it thrives. The same way, our patient has a value system. And the patient's value system determines how they understand treatment or how they perceive treatment and how they're going to accept any treatment. So in basic terms, we can divide this into have to do treatment, those people that are urgently in need of support, those who will do things to avoid having problems, so the proactive patient, and those who will do, that want to have treatment, will basically do anything necessary to get the right result. We can simplify that by breaking it into two phases. In other words, those who have to have treatments and those who want to have treatment. That's quite a weird statement to make, want to have dental treatment. But if you think about it, those are the people that want to be proactive in their treatment, make the correct choices so that they can have stability and predictability over a longer period of time. And this position, this position where they are, will determine where they find value. So if I have, sorry about that, where they find value. In the above the line, value comes from trust. And the trust we have to earn with a patient. Below the line, emergency reactive people, the value comes from how inexpensive we are or how quickly and how efficiently we can deal with their problems. In this case, trust is to a great extent determined by the degree. In other words, people accept that you've qualified, you have studied, you know what you're talking about, therefore they can trust you. If you want to move up into a more proactive discretionary people, that value comes from trust. You need to actually earn their trust. You need to go out of your way to make sure that they believe in you. So they are the reactive and urgent care patients, but what we're interested in is to see the proactive patients. Those patients who are willing to have preventative treatment and have everyday care. In other words, they will do things that need to be done to keep them healthy and stable. Now, I believe that the proactive patient should form the basis of any modern practice. These are the patients we need to focus our attention on, and we need to try and build into our treatments. How can we look after these people so that we can take a proactive patient and we can move them up into the different levels, so discretionary, regenerative, and we can keep them away from going into the emergency and urgent care basis. And having a practice that is based upon a big proactive patient base is where I believe your value lies. Of course, there are loads of practices out there that work on a high-end treatment base. So we're looking at the discretionary patients being those that will do absolutely anything to receive the treatment they want. So here you're thinking about the full rehabs and the reconstructions and the veneer cases and the big cases that come along. These patients will do almost anything to get the right look, the right feel, and the right function. The question is this the ultimate kind of practice model? Are these the ultimate patients that we want to deal with on a day-to-day basis? And is this where we want to end up every day working with? Now, I've got no problem with people that want to work in a high regenerative discretionary patients with high-end clientele the whole time. I think of APA, if you were to look at names that are floating around. But is that something that we really want to do? And we need to understand the values that those patients need to get to that point. But what happened? What's happened in the past 5 months is a complete disaster in not only in our country, but worldwide. And it's a disaster that has affected each and every single one of us. And it's affected the way we run our practice and how we are going to be successful within our practices. This impact of the coronavirus is present today, and it's going to be present for a long, long time to come. And we have to face the reality that our patient base is going to change. Because of the economic climate, we're going to sit in a situation where patients will not have the funds to have extensive treatment or to get all those extra things done that a lot of us base our practices on. And the market and the client base is dwindling. Therefore, the market and the fighting and the trying to get to those kind of patients is a very competitive market. And it's going to get even more competitive as times go by. And we are going to start, and as we have been in the past 3 or 4 months, we're going to start fighting to try and get through this period. Now, Corné Smith and myself, we kind of started off at a mad rush trying to stabilize our practice and trying to understand how we can manage during this time. And part of this whole process that I've been through in the past 3 or 4 months has brought me to look at what impact it will have on us every day. And you can see that in how, when you look at your pyramid of the values of patients, how the volume of regenerative discretionary proactive patients are going to dwindle post-COVID. It is going to change. And we are going to sit in a situation where more and more people are going to only be able to afford reactive or emergency treatment. The goal for us, therefore, is how can we harness, or how can we keep our proactive, our big middle base of patients? How can we keep those patients active? And how can we keep those people within our practice and not allow them to disappear or to forget about us? That is where we come back to exactly this, focusing on the patient themselves. What is it that we need to do to keep that patient interested in the treatment that we have and bring them value within our system? How can we maintain our big patient base? How can we work to create value for them? Because we talked about a value pyramid. What is the patient's value perception? How is it that what can we do to create better value for the patient throughout that system? There are a few key points and key elements that play a role that are really important. That is trying to create a positive emotional experience, because dentistry is actually not nice when you're lying in the chair. How can we create a positive emotional experience for our patients? How can we communicate effectively and efficiently with them? How can we set ourselves apart from the guys down the road? Now, there are 500 people on this webinar, so down the road is a lot closer than you think it is. So how can we start being different and distinguish ourselves so that we can have value for our patients? Not only through quality treatment, so not only about how great our hands are, but about how good the service is that we actually survive. And that we do by building trust. How can we build trust within our patient and the patient building trust within us. So what is the patient's journey? What is it that the patient experiences when they start going through our practice? How do they contact us? What is it that the patient gets if we were to sit back and look at where they come from and what it is that they see and what they perceive and how that creates value? The first thing a person does is they search, they go look for somebody, they make a phone call, preferably they will come and visit the practice, they will meet the clinician will do some kind of treatment, and then there will be a recall process wherein we'll try and reconnect to the patient only so that the whole system will start repeating itself. That is the journey that our patient is going to be going on. So what does that look like? First thing is searching. How do people get hold of us? How do they actually get your number? How do they contact you? In today's day, I literally came down from a restaurant just now. If you were to go look for something, if you were to go look for a new restaurant, a steak restaurant, say, for instance, sorry for the vegetarians. If you were to go look for a restaurant in your area, where do you go look for it? You pick up your phone and you type it in and you go search. That is the only thing you do. You literally go search. And if I'm tired of the restaurant that I've been to before, or I feel that the meal that I've had recently was just not as good as I came to expect it to be, then I'll easily pick up my phone and start clicking a few letters, trying to search around, and then I'll go look for what comes up. Then, most probably, I will go and I will go look at a review, or I'll go look at their Facebook page or their Instagram page. I'll go and find out, what do people say about this restaurant? What are they doing? What's cool about them? What do people suggest we should actually go and eat there? What is it that we need to do? That is the process that we follow. And that is exactly where we are in today's modern world. So if we could look at digital realm, and the influence that digitalization has had on the world, the figures are astronomical. So this is in 2019, with 7.5 billion people in cities. 5 billion people have a mobile phone. Almost 4.5 billion people use the internet, and 3.5 billion people are active on social media. And most of those active social media users are actually active on mobile social media. So people are out there with their phones in their hand all the time, and they tend to make decisions with their phones in their hand. And just like you and just like me, when I read a review about a restaurant, I believe it. I think that's great. So let's go for it. And that is exactly what happens out there. Now, what makes you think that when you search dentist, the patient is not going to do exactly the same thing? That they are not going to form an opinion regarding you or your practice or who you are based upon your presence on the internet, whether it be on social media, on a web platform. So the first and critical aspect of the patient's journey is exactly that, just getting hold of you and finding you in the right way and creating an opinion about you without them actually having ever picked up a phone call yet. Now, I believe that most of people will have some kind of social media presence or some kind of website, and I think it's incredibly important that you get something going. So I'm not going to harp on about that, other than please make sure that you do that. I also know that most of you are going to go and type in John van Lierop now and go and look and see what my social profile looks like. And most probably you're going to be very disappointed because you're going to see me running up the mountain and my kids running around. But that's fine. It's my profile. It's my life. And it's what I show and interact with people. You'll also probably find my website, or my Corna and myself, our website. And just a heads up, we've been spending the past 3 months rebuilding it. Okay, so it's not there yet, but it will probably be there soon. So I'm embarrassing myself by telling you to go and build a beautiful website, and then we still need in the process of updating ours. Which brings me to a very, very important aspect. Within this whole process, not only on what your presence is on social media and on the internet, but in every single step in this patient's journey, we need to constantly update and relook and see where we are. Go back and look, go see where we are, do a stock take and reevaluate every single step constantly all the time. And these past 3 months that we've been in lockdown or semi-lockdown was an ideal time to start doing that. It's a pity that I only get to speak to you now about it. Corna is the person to speak to about marketing. She is here, so later tonight when we have a few Q&As, please direct any marketing issues to her. She's the brains behind this whole process. And she'll be able to share a lot of thoughts and interests in that. So I don't want to really harp on about the concept of marketing your practice, other than it is essential that you understand that that is your first image that is created by any random person that goes and looks for you. The next thing is the phone call. Okay. That is my daughter. My daughter's an amazing little girl. I love her to bits, and she's probably one of the most important people in my life. But she's not a great receptionist. Maybe one day, we don't know, but she probably won't be the best receptionist. She's way too much like I am. When it comes to your reception, that phone call, that first phone call that gets made, your reception is probably the most important person in your team. They are critical in creating the image and that first 30 seconds, that perception that you have of a practice. We talk about when you walk and meet somebody for the first time, that first impression. That first phone call and that answering of the phone is your first impression after the person has already found your number. So it's critical that we look at what is happening at reception and what they are doing with those phone calls. They are the first contact point. They are critically important because they need to answer questions that patients have about dentistry and random questions, and they need to have an understanding of dentistry more so than a lot of assistants have. Incredibly important is they need to be able to take a patient that is asking a question. They need to guide that patient and to try and convert that question into an appointment that somebody actually comes into your business. They set the expectations of the practice, of the patient. How the patient perceives the practice will be once they arrive there. What they expect in their mind, what they will see. Because just like when you're listening to an ebook or you're reading a book without watching a movie, you create a perception in your mind when you listen to somebody's voice. So it's very important that they set correct expectations from our patients, for our patients. And they are the first port of call for the value that our patient receives. So it's very, very important that we look and we understand and we help and support our reception staff to be the best that they can possibly be. Your reception task list from me to you. What I want you to do is to actually take some time and go sit in your waiting room or go sit next to your receptionist for a few hours. Just go sit there. Go listen to the conversations that they're having with patients. Go listen to how many times your phone rings, how many SMSs they need to send or WhatsApps they need to send, how many emails they need to answer, how they answer the emails, how quickly they respond to questions, what kind of tone, what kind of message they give to your clients, your patients on the other side of the phone. Listen to how they interact and understand what they do. Try and find a way of getting a default script for them. How are they going to answer the phone? What is it that they're going to say? How are they going to say it? Once they've done, any questions that come in, have a filter box of questions. If it's about restorative, then this is the answer and this is how we're going to go do it. Kind of have like a flow chart, an idea of, so that the reception can have a clear idea as to what they need to do with different aspects and different queries that are coming through. How they're going to filter it, who they're going to filter it to, and how they're going to deal with it. Even create a price list or explain to them what the price list entails and what value there is within the cost, what it includes rather than what it excludes. And very, very important, once they've actually started stabilizing, once you've got a script going, important to start tracking what's happening. Just jotting down a little list, writing down patient phoned, what they phoned for, where they came from. Was it a friend that referred them? Was it from the internet? Was it on social media? Was it random they walked past? Note it down. Every single interaction. And then then note when the patient comes in. And that way you can actually start seeing what the conversion rate is. In other words, how many of the patients that pick up the phone and actually call you convert to coming into your practice to physically meet the dentist. And you'll be surprised what that conversion rate is. And that from that conversion rate, you can determine how successful your reception is in dealing with queries. The higher the conversion rate, obviously, the better they are doing. But if they're not converting patients, then there's obviously something wrong. And then critically reassess, constantly go back and evaluate and find and see what you can do. That then brings us to the actual visit. The actual arriving at your practice. Now, not everybody is going to have a beautiful upgrade practice in the middle of town, somewhere with fancy everything and it's kadushi everywhere. That is not necessarily what it means. What the impression is in your practice is the image that you try and portray about your own personality and who and what you stand for. And that's important. And that's sometimes, it's like living in your own house. So I've lived in the same house for 15 years. It's a very long time, I'm getting old. But I've been in the same house for 15 years. We renovated the house, gosh, now 10, 11 years ago. And I keep on still thinking about my house as it was 10 years ago, when I was so proud of my beautiful renovation, how great it was and how cool it was to sit in my new bathroom with my freestanding bath and my great new taps. But that was 10 years ago. What does my house look like now? What does it look like when I walk in? Am I just blinding myself to everything else that goes around? Do I still see the marks on the wall or the skirting board that's cracked? Or do I still see the lights not working? Because you tend to shut off from all these things. Heaven forbid you go visit a friend of yours in their house and you walk through the door and you see a light not working, or a skirting board that's cracked, or there's something, paint coming off the wall. Then all of a sudden you create a completely different perception of that person. Yet we don't do it to ourselves. We kind of tend to not be judgmental. And that's exactly what happens in our house. And this is your second task that I want you to do. So when you're sitting with your receptionist tomorrow or next day, listening to their conversations, I want you to sit in your own waiting room. I want you to sit there for half an hour, an hour. Just look around, just perceive it, just see what it is. And be critical of everything that you see, but also everything that you hear. All those little conversations happening in the background, all those little things going on, all the people arguing in the kitchen, all those things. Be critical of everything that's going on there, because that is where your patient will walk in and sit down and wait for their treatment. And already at that point, they're starting to create a perception of who you are and what your value is. Write a list of things that annoy you. Get buy-in of the people around you and try and reassess. There's a great website that I came across, Association for Service Providers in Dentistry in the UK. ASPD, if you go look that up, they've got some great articles and summary articles about some things that you can do to try and change and modify and get the right experience for your patient when they arrive, because that creates the value perception for that patient. Then finally, do we actually get to meet the patient? Have you noticed how long that journey is? Have you noticed how many aspects I've had to happen, had to run smoothly before we actually got to this point? And what perception has the patient got of you before they even meet you for the first time? What background noise has been happening in their minds until you shake their hands, or in COVID, give them a fist bump or elbow hit? But that perception has already been created, and you had zero impact on it. You had no impact. Whether you shaved that morning or didn't shave, whether you had your hair done on Saturday or not, at this point, it had no impact whatsoever. Very valuable to understand how much has happened. Now that the patient's actually in your chair or in your surgery, now you can put on the charm, and now you can start working on the things that you do to try and bring value to the patient in the clinical sphere. Okay? And to do this, it's dictated by the way that we interact with the patient, how I talk and how I communicate. And generally, there are three ways: intimidated, intimidating, and intimate. Intimate, I had to really think hard about using that word, but let's go with it. Okay? It's amazing how close they are. They're all the same root word. They all have the same basic meaning. But small changes have a massive impact on the perception and the outcome. Intimidated, intimidating, and intimate. Very close, but very, very different. So how do we do that? The intimidated interaction. That you automatically think about the fact that I'm a student, or I've just qualified in my first, second, third, fourth, fifth year, even your 20th year out of varsity, working on patients. A little bit scared, a little bit apprehensive, not exactly sure how to approach. age is not always an indicator of how you are reacting or responding or working with patients if you lack the confidence to do so. And you get intimidated quickly by other people's thought processes and what their views and needs are. Interestingly, intimidated also means that when you are in a situation like now, where we're all very much looking to survive as much as possible, we tend to do treatments that we don't normally do. And we start saying yes to treatments and things to do purely because we are intimidated by the stress of having to run the practice. That there's financial stress or financial pressures on us. So although intimidate could be a personal thing, so interaction, it could also be a thought process and a pattern as to what you're doing at that moment with what's happening in your practice at that moment. So you can be anxious. And that means that you don't always say everything that needs to be said, which means you are too scared to lose the patient. And you start doing whatever you need to do to keep that patient. And that means we make decisions for the patient without really giving them all the information that they need. The other one is intimidating. Now, intimidating doesn't always, like in this image, mean the big, bald guy standing over you trying to pull your tooth out. Very different. Intimidating is also, I've met many little petite female women that completely intimidate, okay? Because it's the power of the personality, the classic A-type, that what is right, what's wrong is wrong personality. That happens. And a lot of us as dentists have that kind of thought process. This is right, and this is the way it should be. I don't really care what you think. This is how it should be. And that can be very intimidating towards a patient. And is, to a great extent, going to have the same effect as what the previous one, what was it? Intimidate. Means limited communication, and you're overly dictating to the patient as to what needs to happen. Very old-fashioned way of dealing with things. Then you get the intimate, and I'm going to say co-diagnostic because it's probably a safer way of saying things. The co-diagnostic interaction. In other words, how we now talk to a patient. How do we ideally want to communicate information, and how do we ideally want to share knowledge and the patient's clinical information with them? And that's co-diagnostic, when we try and bring the patient into the conversation as much as possible. So we try and give as much information as we possibly can to the patient. We discuss all the options that are there, that it's available, and what impact each option will have. And we then guide the patient through the treatment and their treatment choices. This doesn't have to take hours and hours and hours. It literally is just an attitude. It is literally just deciding that I would like to share with you what information I have gathered about you. And once I share that information with you, you have the power to make decisions about what it will affect in your life. That is co-diagnostic. And that is the principle of slow dentistry. That is where slow dentistry ethos really comes from. It's based upon the fact that we need to be informing our patients and helping them make informed decisions that affect their lives. It is one of the pillars of slow dentistry. And I encourage you to go to the Slow Dentistry website and go and have a look and see what those pillars are and how important that can be and how you can have that within your own clinical or your practice. And through these actions, through creating a positive emotional experience, through effective communication, like we've talked about, we set ourselves apart purely by just being present and by explaining. You are creating a huge amount of value for your patient, and they are more inclined to accept the information that you give them and the treatment options that you're putting towards them. This is not about, can I sell a treatment plan? This is about, can my patient accept and understand what the best process and treatment is for them at that point? And that only happens if we can build trust with the patient. They must believe in us so that they can understand and follow us. So how do we do that? That comes through listening. Okay? Listening is a very important aspect. And my wife will tell you that I'm probably the worst person in the world when it comes to that. I'm probably the second worst communication person in the world. Okay? My dog is the worst. It is ridiculous. But it's so important that we listen to what people have to say for us. And in a conversation, you listen, you acknowledge, and you repeat. By listening, acknowledging, repeating, you build, you show that you've been listening. And it's that flow of information that means that the patient understands that you are on the same page as they are. You must get to know them better, understand them, so they can be part of the treatment. So you must question them. Ask pertinent questions as to what needs to happen. Listen to their story. And by inviting them and questioning certain histories and things that have gone on in the past, you allow them to start being part of their journey. Leading questions like, why are you here today? Why are you here today and not last year? What changed to bring you here today, but you weren't here last year? Why today? What's made the choice? And a great question is always, what treatment have you had in the past? And you'll get the one set of patients that will talk to you about every single filling and experience and every single treatment they've had. And then you'll have the other set of people that, well, I can't remember. I've got no idea. I remember I've got a filling. Meantime, they've got 10 fillings. Why do you question people? Very important. The reason we question people is because by questioning, people start thinking about what's happening and what's happened in their mouth. When they start thinking about what's happened in their mouth, they start owning it. They start realizing, but actually that's in my mouth. And if you ask the nice question, always like, yes, you had a crown done. Okay, why did you have a crown done? I don't know, the tooth broke. Why did the tooth break? Oh, I remember I had a big filling on the tooth and then it broke and then I had to crown it. Okay. So you had a big filling. Instead of, I have a crown. Now they understand that there's a journey that took them to that point and they can start owning that journey. And if they own the journey, they will start owning their treatment. And if they own their treatment, they will start looking after themselves better and they'll start making better decisions that affect them. By asking their thoughts on past treatment and future health, you allow the patient to own their dental health. That is very important. And then be unique. Be different. Do something different to the people down the road. Just something different. We do it differently in the process that we do and how we talk to patients and how we unpack the treatment before we start. But you can have a different sequence. You can have something that sets you apart from everybody else. It could be the music you listen to, it could be the TV on the roof, it could be the jokes you make, whatever it is. Just do something that sets you apart from everybody else. That will create a value system. Ideally, create an environment where the patient hears something that they've never heard before from another dentist. Something that's different, that nobody else has ever told them. Then they will start connecting with you and they'll start seeing value in that. So in the end of your conversation, this meeting that's taken place, and it could be the first time you've seen the patient, it could be the 10th time you've seen the patient. That meeting and that interaction should always be the same. you should always expect or always treat every time a patient walks into your room, you should treat it as if it is the first time they've walked into your room. And treat them with the same kind of respect and the same conversation every time. So that you, after all your questions, you should have an idea what the patient's values are, what they expect from their treatment, and importantly, what warnings you can see coming up. And decide how you want to approach the patient. And at the end of the conversation, the patient should feel that they've got value. Something is unique about this, and they're enjoying it, and they are willing to stick it out. That they are part of the treatment, and they start owning to the treatment, and they become responsible for their own treatment. Guide them into owning it. Too easily, as dentists, we own the patient's problems. The patient needs to own their problems. You are purely a facilitator in correcting it. Let them own it and make them excited about the fact that they're going to get this great new restoration or this great treatment. That is the goal of your interaction every single time. And then we have a situation where we can actually present a treatment plan, for instance. We can talk about how we then discuss treatment options. After our conversation, our consultation, we can discuss what kind of treatments we need to have and how we're going to do these treatments. Big question is, why do patients not accept treatment? It's always an interesting concept. Why do people say no to receiving treatment, or they just never come back? There was a big research that was done in the US a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, that's the only statistics that we have. And this research basically they looked at 200 patients and they interviewed them. Of those 200 patients, 30%, they were all in the higher income brackets. Okay, so high income brackets in the top 30%. They've all been to a dentist or hygienist in the past year. They all knew that they needed treatment, and some of them actually had pain. So questions was asked, why did they not accept the treatment that was proposed by the dentist? 15%, only 15% said cost. 20% said they didn't have enough time to do the treatment, whatever that means. But 60% didn't like the dentist or the manner in which the treatment was presented. 60%. Somewhere along the line, the way we communicate with our patient in showing them treatment options affects the way they accept a look at their treatment. So what is it that we can do in presenting a treatment plan? And this could be from the simplest single restoration to the biggest rehab that you've ever done in your life. What is it that we need to do? It's about trying to show them what's going on through photographs, radiographs. In other words, just take the time to explain. Explain to them what you found, what's going on in their mouth, let them understand that. What could happen if there's no treatment? In other words, the consequence of inaction. Then the consequence of action. In other words, what are the benefits that they get? And what are the alternatives to this set of treatment options? And again, this could be a 5-minute conversation just talking about what is ahead of them, letting them understand where you're coming from and why you're wanting to have them there. Only now, after all of that, are we actually finally getting to treat our patient. Now only, the 20 years of what I've been learning and studying and everything I've been doing and the courses I've gone to, now only are they actually going to take effect. So many things has happened before this point that had a direct impact. So whether I'm able to do this or not. And that is how important everything else is. And obviously, again, we follow slow dentistry principles and do the best possible treatment we can, because that is critical. And that brings me to this journey. It's finding the patient, the interaction with the patient on your social media, on your website, or wherever it is they find you, to the first phone call that gets made to your reception, how reception reacts and responds and how they deal with the call, to the first time they walk through your front door and they sit in your chair in your waiting room and experience that, to the meet and greet, that first interaction that we have with that patient, how we interact with the patient, what we say to them, how we explain the treatment and the treatment options, until we finally get to a point where you can actually treat them, you can actually do physical work. And that is where I find my happy space, is when I actually start doing that final treatment. But that's not the end of the journey, because you can see there's still a part missing. And this part is a super critical part, because just like tonight, you're probably going to remember about 20% of what I've told you tonight. Because that is just the way it is. I've worked hours preparing, and I've spent sleepless nights trying to get all this together, and you're going to remember 20% of what I've said. That's fine. I understand that, and I accept that, and I expect that. The same way, there are some things that are going to stick in your mind. There are some things that are going to stick in the patient's mind. The trick is to get triggers, to try and get them to remember you, to remember that they were at your practice. And the next time they think about doing something, they're going to come back to you. How do we do that? Through a comprehensive and structured recall process. Reconnecting with patients. 5 minutes, Nadine. Reconnecting with patients. Okay? That recall process is critical and is so often overlooked. And I only have to think about my own practice and the experiences we have, in how we tend to get so caught up in doing the active treatment, we tend to forget about all those thousands of patients that are on your books. Don't get time to connect with them. Yet the ideal world is that we should have this big, Giuseppe Teodoro explained it to me once. He said, your patients should be like a sea of patients. It should be a gentle flow coming in the one end, and it should just fill up and fill up and fill up, and every now and then a little bit overflows on the other end. But you should have this big pool of patients, and all those patients need to come back and connect with you, and you should interact with them and go swimming around in the pool the whole time. Okay, that's connecting, reconnecting with the patient base. If you can do that, then you don't need to have a massive new patient drive, because you've got so many current patients that value you and that want to come back to you and they want to see you. They want to be there. You've impressed them already. Just bring them back and remind them how to do that. How do we do that? The most successful dental recall system is one of the best ways to grow your practice from within. That is the utmost statement. The better you can communicate with your current patients, the higher success rate will be and the better your practice will do. And in today's times, where we're sitting and we're battling and we're trying to figure out how we're going to keep ahead of things and how we're going to survive, this is where you should go look for things that you can change and you can improve upon. How can I reconnect with people that already know me? My friends, how can I get in hold with my friends? So how do you do that? Nothing wrong with a phone call. Personal phone calls work. Phone. Get on the phone, get your reception, identify somebody, pick up the phone and phone people. Have a list of people you want to phone, 5, 10, 15 every day. Those people get phoned. You can send personalized emails directly geared towards that patient. You can do it in simple systems. You can use the current software that is available in the country. Pull that information, export that information, and send a personalized email with your name attached to it. Or WhatsApp, or business WhatsApp groups, or SMSs, automated SMSs that get sent out, and reminders get sent out. That's important. Connect through newsletters once a month, once every 3 months, just so something pops up, so it's brand awareness, so people can remember, that's me. They connect with you. Having a social media presence just so that you're there all the time. And lastly, sending emails to patients, reminding them of recalls. Once a year, once every year, a big recall set. Try and get a structure in place so that you know that in a cycle of a month, 2, 3, 4 months, that these are the people I want to get hold of, how I'm going to get hold of them, what system I'm going to use, and how I'm going to remind them. And then don't feel deflated, because people are fickle and they often need to be pushed 2, 3, 4 times before they actually do something. Okay. So often we need to connect with people on 2, 3, 4 different platforms before they actually will act on something. And that is important to realize. So don't feel like it's not going to happen. It's not working. Rather work harder at it and get more reminders out there to build on your pool of patients so they can interact with you better. And then we come back to exactly where we started, the search. Because my patients come in, they've had the treatment, they've gone onto a recall system. 6 months, 9 months, 12 months later, they get a reminder to phone. They're sitting in the car. What are they going to do? Oh, Dr. van Lierop. And they're going to start my name into Google, and boof, up comes my name. And what did they do? They went and searched for me on the internet. And then the whole cycle repeats itself. And so it continues. From the searching your name and getting your contact details to that first interaction and the phone call and how reception deals with them, to the first time they sit in your waiting room, could be the second or third time, but it's always like a first time. That interaction, that meeting and discussion, the quality of the treatment that you do, and how you retain those patients through a recall system. And then you get a cycle going and you're able to start rebuilding and working on your own practice base. Having a patient-centered experience, looking at dentistry and what's happening in your practice through the eyes of the patient, only then can we actually start sitting back and working on everything else that is around, which includes my clinical skills, my personal life, and some of the other practice stuff. But without the patient, there's absolutely no future and no point in doing any of this. So with that, I'd like to thank you. It was always interesting to sit online and having a conversation with myself on my computer screen. I should actually have a video of this, me sitting here and talking. But yeah, it was great. I hope you guys are all still there and nobody's died or run away or the food hasn't burned. Please feel free to ask any questions. I think we'll have a question and answer session now. I just want to reiterate that within this whole patient journey, every single aspect has got value, and every single aspect needs to be addressed and needs to be correct for the whole patient experience to be what you want it to be. And always go back and reassess and check and see where you are on each, and try and fine tune and correct and make adjustments as you go along, and do that constantly so that you can grow and can develop, and that your patient experience and patient value can grow and change. Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing now. If I can find my desk. There we go.
Thank you, Sean. That was an amazing presentation, and I trust all the attendees. I was having a look at the numbers; they just kept on rising, so people were really enthralled by your discussion.
Thank you.
Dr. Cornay Smith is back with us. She was
Dr.
just
Cornay?
she's going to join us for the question and answers, and then I'm just going to be a few announcements before we let you go. Okay, so we have a first question. Thanking you for the informative session. What boundaries apply to advertising, and how can a dental therapist like myself advertise? The floor is yours.
Cornay.
It's a
I
marketing
knew,
You knew I was going to
yes,
do it.
yeah, it's fine. Someone has to answer the hard questions. So what I would suggest is that all of you guys actually, for your own sake, go and do research, because when you research it for yourself, you will remember it. But there is some information on the South African Dental Association website about the limitations and what they actually suggest that we do in regards of marketing. And then our body, the HPCSA, recently published a new addition to the marketing regulations. Previously, the only thing that they actually guided on there were 2 points. The first one is, you can't compare yourself to other people and say you're the best. And the other one was that you can't advertise falsely. Those were the only 2 things that they guided us on. But at the moment, they are trying to incorporate things on social media and what we're allowed to post and what we're not allowed to post. But you know what, if there's something that COVID really taught me, was that this is all about self-policing, and we need to really just do what is right. So don't do things that you shouldn't be doing. Don't post stuff that's not right, and just be ethical in the way that we market ourselves. Because in all honesty, I think it's a bit of the wild, wild west out there still with regards to the do's and don'ts in marketing. I hope that's a vague enough and direct enough answer in the same way.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cornay. You saved my life.
All right. The second question from an anonymous attendee. Best practice management system, especially with regards to recalls? Pass it back.
I'm actually...
Yeah.
There isn't one.
They're all the same. I wouldn't, right now at this stage, your best software is probably anything you can buy from the States. It's probably the best way to do it, really. Currently on the South African market, I wouldn't say, well, we haven't experienced enough. Well, I've worked with 3 different systems now. Everything has their own limitations. They all have their own quirky little things that work and don't work. At the end of the day, it's about how you work within the system, how you learn how to manipulate their strengths and use that. So for instance, we used to export a lot of data and send through third parties. We've adapted that into working directly through our software. We're integrating SMSs and recalls and things like that through the software. But by no means is it a click of a button and things work the way you want it to work. For that, unfortunately, at this stage, you're still looking at having to import some kind of software. Sorry, I know I'm going to irritate and anger a lot of software developers out there, but hey, you can come argue with me later.
Thank you. It's just a note of thanks from one of the attendees. He's actually going to incorporate strategies mentioned in his laboratory as well. And then we have another question. Where to start marketing on a limited budget? Google, website, Facebook?
No, do you want to do that?
Yeah, that's cool. So it's all free.
Yeah.
You don't need a budget. It's actually free. So just get a presence. You can get a Google homepage or Google My Business page for free. You can get social media for free, and you can just go on Facebook and Instagram. And then I think that you can even get a $600 voucher from Google to do a few AdWords in the beginning, which is very nice. And then after that, you can look at outsourcing your AdWords if you would like to do that. Or you can actually, in this time where a lot of us have extra time, you can do quite a lot of it yourself if you're a little bit computer savvy. I would advise that someone just helps you with the setup of a website. But it's really not that expensive in the beginning. But once you start getting very technical, and once you start really looking at a return on investment, and you can actually build a practice by spending a percentage of your turnover. And we normally look at about 6% of your turnover that should actually be allocated to a marketing budget. So I think that's a very wise way of looking at it. Look at what your turnover is and then spend accordingly. Don't overspend, because there's a lot of people that will just take your money with no return.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's a very important point Dr. Smith raises, is that don't just go with the first person that you outsource to. Shop around, because some people do tend to charge a higher service for a specific product. Whereas if you just shop around, as with anything, you probably would find something that's a bit more reasonable. But as Dr. Smith has mentioned, Facebook, set up the account for now. The promotion and that you can always do at a later stage. Try and get your existing patient base involved in interacting on that. And that will just grow organically by your existing patient base. A simple thing like, I don't know if Dr. van Lierop mentioned it, was after a difficult procedure, or the patient experienced a bit of trauma during that procedure, give them a phone call or get someone in your office to give them a call. Say, the doctor asked me. That personal touch will definitely go a long way. And besides retaining that patient, people tend to go on other people's opinion of dentists. So in a conversation, they would mention you. So it's marketing organically, and it just grows from that. On to the next question. Thanks again for an amazing presentation. Thanks for an interesting webinar. When is the next bridge course? Dr. van Lierop can answer that one.
It's a bit interesting. Look, I mean, obviously we're all stuck in limbo at the moment because it's really difficult to host any large events, very difficult for people to travel. Without putting my head on the block, I would say we're still looking at finishing off the current courses for this year. So we've already got 2020 is sold out, but for sure 2021 we'll be running quite a few courses. And hopefully, as you can see how great these webinars are and how people interact, hopefully we can create a bit more of a presence also for you guys in similar kind of ways, and share some information that way.
Thank you. Another appreciation of the great lecture, and you actually make them proud to be part of this lovely profession. So you're an inspiration as well. And how do you respond to fees discussion? Russell Dury.
Okay, so I'm the worst person when it comes to talking about money. Cornay will completely laughing already.
Yes.
So I'm the first person to give discounts left, right, and center. So I'm probably not the best to ask. Look, I'm fundamentally, you must value your own work. If you believe or you value yourself and your education, what you've done and what you can bring to the patient, then you shouldn't be ashamed or feel worried about what you're charging them. So obviously look at the fee structure and look at where you're pitching yourself within the market, so what your market is like and we are going to work in. But feel confident that if your belief, your own value, don't underestimate the value you have as a clinician. Yeah.
Thank you. That also brings to mind that for a lot of us in the profession, due to the environment that some of us work in, we've been conditioned to charge a certain fee. Well, SADA has developed the decalc that will allow you to figure out what is it actually that you can charge. Yeah. And then you have a scientific rationale in which to set your prices and charge what makes economical sense and what you are worth.
Exactly.
A lot of our patients are on third-party funders, but we should also understand that we need to charge what we are worth. And that is the standpoint of SADA. There is a new newsletter that has gone out recently, the SADA Right, where they are requesting information from members. And it's also posted on the social media pages. And I also invite all dentists, dental professionals, complete that survey. And you will notice that SADA is of the opinion that balance billing is allowed by the HPCSA, and that should be incorporated.
Okay.
So that's just something that I'm just getting sent out for now.
Practice fees is something that you need to sit down and calculate per hour, per 15 minutes, per 5 minutes. You need to figure out how much it is you need to generate to be able to keep your doors open. There's no point doing treatment for next to nothing, and in a year's time you have to close your doors, because then you're not helping anybody. So I completely agree with that, and again, support SADA in gathering the information.
Thank you. On to the next question regarding cell phone text. Is it okay to text non-patients to or only my old patients? Example, next of kin whose phone is on the patient records.
Sorry, just say that again.
Okay. Regarding cell phone text, is it okay to text non-patients or only existing patients? For example, on a next of kin filled in on the patient file, is it permissible to market to them?
Okay, so the technicality of permissibility, I probably can't help you with right now. I don't know if Cornelia has an answer. The one thing that you're talking about recalls. In other words, if I need to reconnect with patients, and the only way I can reconnect with a patient is by using the information that is currently on the system. Yeah?
Yes, I assume I would ask the person posting.
I assume that is what it is. Look, I would think about an 18-year-old that's given their parents' phone number. That kind of thing, I would have no problem SMSing mum to say your daughter needs to come for their routine hygiene visit. Or
even maybe include it on your patient form. I opt in to receive marketing or something. So you have a trace record of being either opt in or opt out to communication, and start building your database.
Yeah, very important that you have that opt-in clause. You're not allowed by the European law or recent communication law, you're not allowed to just cold email and cold message people. They need to have opted in. Okay, and that is part of the system in our database. That would be part of the system.
Yes, and on your social media page, you actually create a click or a button that they could actually sign up. That would be allowed. Yeah.
Newsletter link up or connection link up, or those little things that you can do. Same thing goes on your website. Join us here. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Another well presented, Jean. Another question is, are we permitted to move to being a fully digital or paperless practice? I'm going to ask that attendee to rephrase or maybe just give us a little bit more information regarding that.
If I can quickly jump in there, Dr.
Yes.
Osman, I'm assuming that they're referring to protection of information, because that's a big concern when you start storing information in a digital form. So at the moment, I think that we are allowed to have digital storage, but it just needs to be stored in a way that people can't hack it or access it. So it's a more expensive and a more secure way of storing information if you actually do store your patient's information. So, and it's one of those things that's also not regulated. So we are allowed to do it if it's done correctly and securely.
Yeah, all current software companies will have a secure database, so it's all encrypted. So nobody can hack into, for instance, your cloud-based systems. Nobody's going to be able to just randomly hack in and download all the patient database. That's secured by the service provider. So all that information is secure.
So you always recommend going with a reputable service provider, trying to get sure that it's POPI. I know overseas they have the HIPAA Act, which regulates that.
Yeah.
There's even interchange between professionals because there's a lot of interception of data that happens that way.
For instance, we have there's an app where you can share information between clinicians about a patient. So you're referring a patient to different clinicians, then that is an actually secure app. So you need to be able to log into the app to access the data of the patient. So it's all secure based. So you need to be able to show that it is secured. Even your offsite data, for instance, if you're backing up your data offsite, that data needs to be in a secure environment that has been certified as secure.
Thank you. And that also would translate to making sure that your Windows and your other software is also continuously updated. Some might focus on the PMA, but forget or neglect to look after the antivirus or the computer itself.
Exactly.
So that's also something. And you should actually develop policies in your practice about patients, staff opening emails with funny attachments and things like that, because those backdoor hackers can actually affect. Do you know MPS did a POPI presentation for medical faculty today? Yes,
No.
I was aware that they did do it.
Yeah.
MPS did send out an email, unfortunately, or we had this scheduled before that.
Yeah. Sorry, I had to.
Sorry, Dr. Van Leeuwen.
I had to work, so I couldn't go to it. I couldn't attend.
No. Thank you. There's lots of feedback regarding this information. POPI applies directly to us. Yes, we will try and get that information from medical protection, and we probably perhaps would host another one. I would get SADA education to professional development to look at making contact and seeing if we can have one for the dental profession as well. Thank you, SADA and Dr. Van Leeuwen, for a valuable session. Great advice amidst these trying times. And I think we've reached the end of the questions.
Great.
I'm going to give 5 more minutes for anyone else who wants to get in a few questions before we close for tonight. I think you've presented very well. There are no unanswered questions.
Can mean one of two things.
Maybe the 20%.
Yeah, that you know the 60-20-20 rule. Is it 60-20-20 or something like that? 2 out of 10 people think you're God, 2 out of 10 people think you're the devil, and 6 people don't really care. So,
I think this would apply.
no, that's just the way. That's the way it is, and that's the same thing with patients. You know, you'll have patients that absolutely love you, you'll have patients that hate you, and we need to learn and understand that some people just won't like us. Doesn't matter, and then you have to focus on those 6 that are kind of in between, and then see how you can harvest and maintain and work with those 6 to try and keep them with you so that they don't disappear. That's really the goal of
I think openness and transparency and engaging with them in a discussion really goes a long way. Even if it's not within the clinical realm, even if you just get to know them a little bit, just 1 or 2 questions about their personal life.
No, just be a little bit more open. Just be there and have a conversation. 2 minutes of having a conversation with somebody who's got so much value compared to just being quiet and grumpy and sitting in the corner. You can be quiet and grumpy with your staff. You can't be quiet and grumpy with your patients.
That's good advice. Pearls of wisdom.
Not allowed to be quiet and grumpy with your spouse. Okay, that's not allowed.
Another pearl of advice. Any other final words before we end off for tonight?
No, I think thank you very much. It was a great experience. A lot of this is really a journey, and it's a journey, a personal journey as well. It's about trying to figure out what we're constantly in this process of trying to figure out what is better, what we can improve upon, what things we can change, and how we can make the experience better. We always tend to focus on getting our skill set better, but a lot of the time, most of the time actually, it's about getting the experience better and how our patients experience us, and through that bringing value, and through that getting your practice to be more successful and to actually enjoy what you do, love the profession the way we should love it.
Amazing. Thank you. Dr. Smith, any words from yourself?
I thanks John for sharing with us. And I really think for me the past while I started enjoying little things again. If that's maybe something that I can leave you guys with, is I started listening more to my patients, and I think maybe I was at a point where we're so busy and we're so driven by treatment that we really start forgetting about who's behind that mouth.
Mhm.
And in this process, I started getting back to what John said tonight, is let's find out why our patients come to us in the first place, why they chose us and not the other dentist, and then what they really want and how we can meet them there and how we can give them value. And that's not necessarily what we want to do. So I think this time of just slowing down has been good for me as well, and in figuring those things out again.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. I see there's a question. Do you feel the need to attend specialist or special interest courses, lectures to widen horizons as GP?
Yes, for sure. Definitely.
We have to keep on improving. We have to keep on
Definitely.
self-development
Yeah.
so that we
Just
enjoy
because,
what we do.
yeah, just because specialist group having conversation doesn't mean you can sit and listen to it, and doesn't mean you can't sit and listen to it. You need to go and explore and trying to find out. And the great thing about that is actually learning what they look at and how they do things, and then that allows you to make better decisions and guide your patient better. So for sure, constantly try and figure out and try and attend as many specialist courses as you can.
I agree. Okay, just going to do some announcements. Once again, I'm going to remind all attendees the CPD certificates will be loaded onto the SADA platform, and you will be able to access all of these certificates under your member profile. If you're not a SADA member, you will be able to create a profile for yourself and access your CPD certificates. This functionality will be implemented from next week, so just give it some time for everything to be set up properly. Tonight's event was one clinical CEU. It's also available on YouTube for those who have missed it or joined late. It's on the South African Dental Association channel. I would also like to extend an invitation for the upcoming SADA events in celebration of Women's Day, along with GSK. SADA will be hosting a online event with special guests Roxy Marosa and Nikki Bush. The Power of I Am and Which Jacket Are You Wearing? SADA celebrates women in dentistry, taking place on the 6th of August. Emails have been sent out and it will be posted on the SADA social media pages. Please register and look forward to having you attend the day with us. On the 11th of August, the KZN branch will be hosting Dr. Macharisu Mothopi Peri pre-radiation dental assessment. What's the big deal? So that's the other event that is coming up on the online webinar series. And a lot of these webinars are totally informative, and I have learned a lot by attending and watching these webinars. I'm going to now officially end this session. The attendees can start leaving, or the participants can start leaving. Dr. Van Lierop and Dr. Smith, we're just going to wait for everyone to sort of leave, and then we can also excuse ourselves.
You should put a big screen up that says exit, and then you can
The end.
doors.